Good morning. We are about to break for tea, so this won't be too long. I've been advised to be short on time. I must first appreciate the energy and zeal in you, because today I think half the country is kind of preparing for the cricket match. So whenever the match happens is one thing, but the preparation is going on for the last, 72 hours or something. So I must appreciate and compliment you for being here, because many other similar engagements have all been cancelled because today is the day of the World Cup. I hope that what we'll do today will be interesting and useful for you. As was said in the introduction, I have a very diverse kind of a background, and she did read out quite a bit, and I just want to add to that, I'm not done yet. So that's what we've done, and there's more to do, and we'll do it together. And if you see, my basic training, like Dr. Raman Garg, is from physics, and you can therefore see what kind of potential he has. Physicists have a way of transforming the world without people really realizing it. So you've seen that. So I began with a background in physics. I got involved in computers, got more into computers. My immediate labeling is that for e-learning and so on. But when we start looking at learning and education, and you start looking at the real challenges, you find that the real challenges are not so much from technology, but from the human side. And therefore, the teaching learning process becomes very important. We also have a tradition of education, and especially higher education, which is very, very old. I mean, the University of Oxford in England, the University of Paris in France, the University of Bologna in Italy, these are all about 1,000 years old. And the printing press is about 400 years old. For 600 years, the higher education system worked without any printed books available to it. So that's the kind of tradition we have. And what are we talking about today? It's a completely different kind of a situation. There's huge amounts of information available. The internet is moving on. 3G is coming, 4G is coming. All kinds of things are happening. So therefore, certain fundamentals about how we handle education need to change. And that disruption and transformation is what we are going to see happen before us. So the new generation, the one that I call the A for apps generation, not A for Apple. A for Apple was us. This generation is A for apps, B for BlackBerry, G for Google, F for Facebook, Y for YouTube. It's a completely different generation. They're quite adept at it. We are the transformational generation, and we have to be able to see how it happens. And one missing thing in all this, when I talked about technology or learning or pedagogy, and we had this expression called instructional design. Those of you who were there must have heard about Garnier's 9 points of instruction, and those who went into e-learning talked about some other things. The component that was missing in terms of the whole philosophy of education was about the learning experience. We always talked about a teacher, a book, a classroom, but it's the learning experience for each individual which matters. And it's in that hunt for looking about that missing component that I ran into Deepti. And she comes from, as you see, a very different background. And normally you would have a designer amongst an academic audience. But when you start looking at the new challenges of education, you realize that we need to actually redesign the learning experience. Classroom teaching is not about conveying information anymore. Information is available to you from all directions. In fact, you have to create meaning in that information. And therefore, what we are looking at, the new teaching learning process, is going to be first designing a learning experience. So that experience consists of a series of learning moments where you get that feeling that, I never knew that. Oh, isn't that very interesting? So just like you would have a good storyteller or a good movie engage you, or a good game engage you in the process of playing the game or watching the movie or hearing the story, a good teaching learning experience has to keep you engaged and absorbed so much in it, and therefore a completely new dimension of designing learning experiences come in. I still don't know the answer, and therefore I've tried to build in designers into this, and you will find that this is something which is going to be very interesting, because in terms of, see, the earlier model of education was you looked at very few naturally occurring good learners. So you did them either by your nursery admission or test or IIT JEE or CAT or whatever, and you recruited professors who were naturally good teachers, and you put them together and you hope good learning will happen. It happens, but it is not scalable, it is not replicable, it is not even sustainable, because old universities may lose reputation. So at one time Allahabad was very good, probably not so now. Banaras, Aligarh, Lucknow, so many, and you can go back to Nalanda and Takshila in the distant past, and more recently the IITs of today are no longer like the IITs of the 70s. I mean, it's an admitted fact that there is a 30% faculty shortage, that they're not getting the same kind of good faculty and so on. So therefore we need to understand that we have to create a completely new way of teaching, and two things are coming in very important. One is the technology side, which is making things easier, more accessible, moving at a very fast pace. But technology is a great equalizer. Technology becomes commodity. What distinguishes is the human effort. So traditionally we talked about the role of the teacher, and now we are talking about the learning experience itself. So the emphasis that we want to do in this program today is to touch upon these points. We may not necessarily have the answers, and that's why it's very good, because you are people who can then respond to this and try to build things on your own. The subject is vast, challenge is huge, things are very exciting, but time is limited because we have decided we'll close at 2 o'clock anyway, so that people can go and see the match, and I'm sure the match is very important. This will continue for longer and so on. So I think we're going to have a break now, and after the break we'll assemble. The way we'll do is, I will say a few things initially. I want to first talk about the program that is given there was a more detailed program. We'll make it a little shorter. So I will have one session where I'll talk about rapid advances in technology and something about the teaching learning process. Then I'll let Deepti talk about some matters of learning design. Then again we can maybe need a short break, and then again Deepti continues, and I will then wrap it up towards the end about talking about the new models of resource-based teaching. So we'll try to make it as interesting as possible. We'd also like this to be interactive. So the request is, please ask questions, make comment, make observations, and so on and so forth, so that we can respond to that. And I hope that some of you have heard me twice. This hopefully won't be an exact repetition of that. Some key stories might continue to be repeated, but it will be otherwise fairly different, and I'm sure quite engaging and much more futuristic. So thank you, and we'll have a break and then assemble again.
Thank you, sir. I think you've been an excellent host as well. He's already announced for tea. Ladies and gentlemen, could I request all of you to move upstairs for tea? See you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Audience is yours. Thank you, sir.
How do I control that? Slides. क्या है इसमें नीचे जाने का?
नीचे बैक, ये पॉइंट है.
हाँ, ये बैक, ये नीचे, ये ऊपर. ठीक है. Okay. Anyway, we have about 3 hours, because we are at about 11 o'clock. We will finish at 2 o'clock. So probably what we'll do is we'll make this in a manner that I'll speak for approximately an hour, and then Deepti will speak for an hour, and then I'll again speak for an hour. Approximately what we'll cover during the time will depend upon whatever is most efficient and appropriate. And I would of course request you to please make interjections and comments and observations and so on. The purpose of this session really is to talk about the importance of pedagogy and the rapid speed at which technological changes are happening. Because when we look at the technology and quality enhancement of higher education, if you go into quality of education issues, there are many parameters which people look at. In a broad sense, people look at quality as fit for purpose, quality as exceeding customer expectations, quality as giving consumer delight. There are many such parameters. It's a somewhat new player on the field. I come from a law background. The principle when you were a purchaser in the past was something which in Latin is called caveat emptor. Caveat emptor is a Latin phrase which means buyer beware. So when you bought anything, you just went there and you exercise all your knowledge, caution, experience, And all you women obviously go and look at saris and fabrics, this, that, to validate for yourself whether it is a good stuff or not. But there was no support from the seller after that. So caveat emptor, you buy it and it's your story. Then came concepts like guarantees and warranties and so on. Then quality became an attribute which was sometimes desirable. So you said, yeah, he does of high quality, but day-to-day work needn't have quality. In recent times, quality completely changed. Quality became something without which you could not be present in the market or in the world. It happened because of two things. It happened because of manufacturing being sort of possible to be done with greater and greater precision, and also technology coming up to actually measure quality in serious terms. Because when you were to say how would you measure quality, it would be very difficult in a pre-technological age. At some level, people look at quality as the absence of defects. So that is another measure. So when you look at quality as an absence of defects, then suddenly statistics can become useful. So all this computer software which can do calculations allowed you to say that in say 1 million pieces, how many pieces were defective? Defective meaning did not meet the standard. And when you say that there are 1 million pieces, only 100 were defective or 1,000 were defective, you started having some statistics things on it. And to cut a long story short, and I like the word fast forward, we now talk about something called Six Sigma. And Six Sigma means less than a very small thing in a large sample will be defective. This came in largely from Japan. Japan was typically a low quality manufacturing nation, but they adopted some principles called Kaizen, Gemba Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. And I'm referring to some of these because these are what we will need to do when we are talking about improvement of education, because whenever you look at from anybody what is the status, you will see we are all in the dumps because students are no good, teachers are no good, university is no good, curriculum is out of date. So there are many factors. And the only way to move forward is to agree that, well, we will try to improve upon all these factors in a small and continuous way. And if you do this continuous improvement, then over a finite period of time, you become significantly better. This is what is the law of compound interest. For example, those of you who have an accounting background know that if R is the rate of interest, then upon 70 upon n, you will double the quantum of whatever money you have. So if your improvement rate is 14% per year and continuous, then in 5 years' time, you would have become 100% better than where you were. So anyway, why am I talking about this is because I feel in the future, low quality education will just not have any chance of surviving. In the past, you said those are high quality institutes, these are ordinary institutes, those are low quality institutes. You will find that low quality educational institutions will find it very difficult. Those of you who know the numbers already know that there are a large number of institutions where they are not getting students even though they have created infrastructure, etc., etc. So when the story of quality came, the Americans were not very quality oriented, although they were big, etc. And that's why people who talk about quality distinguish between the Toyota way and the General Motors way and so on. Now the typical General Motors way or a traditional way of quality was that you manufacture a thing according to the way you do. At the end of it you test. And if it is defective you send it back for repair, etc., etc. And some things even slipped through because you were not very rigorous. There is a typical story which used to go around when I was young that in the US if you want to buy a car, you must buy a car which is assembled on a Wednesday or a Thursday, because if you buy a car which is assembled on a Friday, like we are all thinking about the cricket match, they are all thinking about how they will spend the weekend, where they get their dates, etc., etc., and therefore nobody's mind is into the assembling process. If you buy a car assembled on Monday, they're still recovering from the weekend, they're talking about how the weekend was, etc. It's only during midweek that it was any good. Around that time, there was this, there's a narrative of a American company outsourcing some manufacturing to Japan. Japan in the meantime had moved very much high on the road to quality, and the standard American contract was that no more than 1 in 10,000 parts can be defective. So they placed a huge order, and the Japanese wrote back that yes, your contract says no more than 1 in 10,000 parts can be defective. So would you want us to package the defective parts separately, or do you want us to mix them? The point was that we don't make defective parts anymore. Now that's the kind of thing that new quality is about, and that's why you will see in the new quality thing, replacement is also gone, because you know that a defective thing will not come out. And often this is referred to as the Toyota way, because what the Toyota way differs from the GM way is that at every stage there's a full quality check. And if there is a full quality check, the person will not move to the next stage, or that piece will not move to the next stage, and therefore if every component has full quality, then the assembly also has full quality, and you can be much more assured. But anyway, why I'm saying this is that if you look at our traditional education, and I mentioned to you that the tradition is about 1,000 years old, there is absolutely no adherence to quality, because we come from, our education system is derived on the authority. So when you get your degree, what does the Vice Chancellor say? By virtue of the authority vested in me, I award you the degree of this and charge you to be worthy of the same. It doesn't say anything about what you are expected to do. So I can be an MA in English, but I may not be able to speak English, because there is no such requirement. I've passed the exam, I've done the test, there is no indicator that... There is no policy where somebody who employs you, say they employ you an MBA, they expect, as we were saying, that you can make business plans, etc., and you find that you actually can't. So I've given you a business idea and you can't make a business plan. I can't go back to the Vice Chancellor and say, please take this MBA back, repair him and send him back to me. That again doesn't work. Now, it's important, because if we really want people to really believe in education, then you have to ensure that quality at every stage is assured, and at every stage the promise of whatever one has said is fulfilled. I'll share with you a completely different example. All of you are into higher education, but let's get into school education. When you look at children who go to school, all children when they enter class prep or nursery are at the same level. They can say cat, mat, rat, this is my nose, this is my eyes, whatever, my name is such and such. And they kind of go merrily till class 5. It's only when they come to class 6, 7, 8, you will find some people struggling with studies. And the first casualty is mathematics. So suddenly you find this child comes home with poor score in mathematics, shows it to the mother, see, I got so much in maths. And she says, oh, no, even your father is no good in maths. Nobody in this house is good in maths. I think what you do, you take commerce and then go that way. Why does this happen? This happens because we just proceed to give the same thing to everybody. And as I said, if he's a naturally occurring good learner, he learns. Now the problem with people is that you taught them 4 plus 5 is 9. 5 plus 7 is 12. But 4 upon 5 plus 5 upon 7 is not 9 upon 12. Now when a child says that this is not 9 upon 12, it's not very clear as to what really went on. When you teach a child dividing by fractions, so you say, okay, divide 3 by 1 upon 3. He doesn't even understand what does it mean. Now, some people who are quick, so they will say, okay, 3, when teacher has said, turn this upside down, do something, and they get the answer 9. They've still not understood what it meant to divide 3 by 1 upon 3, but they've got the right number. So these are the kind of people who will be abiding people, who will conform to this thing and move on. But the person who's really trying to understand is the person who's not been explained, and that child will go through life with a bit of a misery about maths, as I'm sure many of you would have. Let me make this a little interactive. All of you are grown up, all of you think you know childhood maths. So what is multiplication? Quick. Repeated addition. Very brilliant. So all of us have been taught that multiplication is repeated addition, therefore 3 into 2 is 3 plus 3 or 2 plus 2 plus 2 or whatever. So that's the commutative law of addition. So you can do either 3 plus 3 or you can do 2 plus 2 plus 2. You get 6 answer. Very good. Now remember this rule. Now tell me, what is half into half? What are you adding? So you realize that even at that elementary level of multiplication, for which you would scold your child for not getting the right answer, you are yourself not clear what does it mean, because you just now said a rule was repeated addition, and I've been to audience where they've actually added half and half and said 1. Now you at least know that's not the answer, you know it's 1 upon 4, but the rule you yourself said is you have to do repeated addition. So what did you add? Anyway, the point that I'm trying to say is that when we are looking at quality of education being improved, while the administrative processes, registration, finance, getting results, etc., are important, the most critical is the teaching learning process. So if we have a short time, at other times I will also talk to you about ERP and this, that, how the whole administration can be done, and that is where computers come in very quickly. But when you start saying I will use computers to make better teaching learning process, then you have a bigger challenge. The first challenge you have is that you need to understand that what is a teaching learning process, and that's where pedagogy starts coming in. And we know very little about it. We know very little about it because it is done by some set of people who are in education or psychology or whatever, and it's not very much shareable knowledge. You can't easily get those kind of things. There is progress now even in neurosciences, people looking inside the brain and cerebrum, cerebellum, or medulla oblongata, seeing which part of the cortex lights up when something happens, etc., etc. But to be very honest, with all the progress in knowledge, there is very little we know about how learning happens. So that is the challenge. Technology is moving at a frenetic pace, lots of things are happening, but about learning we know very little. And now when we try to say how we'll do learning with these new technologies, there is even a bigger challenge. So that is the basic message that I'm trying to communicate. Just for some relief, I'll show you a few pictures, and the purpose of that pictures is just to give you an idea as to how rapidly things are changing and what we are looking at. So when we typically talk about a computer today, we are looking at something which is a tablet. This is typically a computer of today. And if you've been following the news and the Barcelona Mobile Congress results, etc., then the year 2011 will be the year of the tablet. You'll see Samsungs and LGs and iPads and iPad 2, and you will see the Micromaxes and everybody coming up with tablets. So by Diwali 2011, almost everybody who's anybody will have a tablet in his hand. The screen size may be 4 inches, 7 inches or 10 inches. If it is 4 inches, you will call it a smartphone. If it is 7 inches, you will call it a pocketbook tablet. It is 10 inches, you will call it a regular tablet. But that is what is going to be. But the earliest computers look like this. And this is not too long ago. This is 1946, a little before I was born. This is what the computer looked like. It weighed 30 tons. It was 30 feet by 50 feet. It had 18,000 vacuum tubes. You can only see them in a museum, 1,500 relays, and so on. So basically it was a series of what you might call electromechanical device, where there would be vacuum tubes and relays, and there would be only one in the world. UNIVAC 1951 reduces to 13 metric tons, size becomes a little smaller. IBM 1620, this is the kind of computer on which I learned computing for the first time. I learned computing in 1966-67, and this was launched in 1959, so coming to India takes a little longer. So this was the big computer of that time, the most modern computer. If you had to do something fast, you could actually calculate by hand. It would be faster than trying to do with the computer, because for the computer you would have to write a program, put in punch cards, process the cards, take that thing, read the printout. You could do things faster by your paper and pencil. IBM 1401, PDP-10 became more this thing 1966. Around the same time, why does it take time? IBM 370 was the next generation around 1970, and this was actually the big computer of the 70s. And 80s, suddenly there was this change, that IBM PC came into the market, made by IBM, and of course the software operating system by Bill Gates, and that transformed things. Then you see, even then there was, this is 81, then the next, what was called XT, which has just meant extended technology, came in 83. That was 2 years. Then 80 came in 84, another year. Then 386 in 85. This is a supercomputer of those days. This was used for predicting weather and so on and so forth. IBM AS400 was 1988. This was this thing. Then we started talking PC 486, 1989. And Pentium came in 1993. You look at the whole thing, and in 1993, this was considered Pentium, and in configurations, all right, Pentium machine, that was the big thing. Then came dual core. And then, of course, laptop started coming in. 2009, this was the kind of a thing which was very popular. You called something a netbook, which would connect to the internet and so on and so forth. And now, of course, we talk about the Apple iPad. And I'm giving you the configuration because you can see the difference. From a 30-ton machine, we are now talking 680 to 730 grams. And the power is actually a lot more in so many different ways. And there's no other field in which there is progress of this kind. If you look at cars, they are more or less the same as they were for the last 100 years. You look at planes, you look at trains, you look at many things. There is no other field of human endeavor where in a short period of about 50 years, things have changed in that kind of a drastic way. And I'm saying this because if education is a preparation for the future, if education is a preparation for work, if education is transforming thoughts of the leaders of today to the leaders of tomorrow, then this becomes a very, very important part. And now you have so many of them. Samsung Galaxy Tab, you have Dell. Every company has got something or the other coming in. So you see that so it's not just one. And now you've got this 7-inch. So I said whether it's 7-inch or 10-inch or 8-inch. So what are the drivers of these ICT growth? The first is that the price